time to turn it over to the acquisition team to lay out their opening arguments, if you will, as to why acquisitions are the fastest and best way to grow your business.
We're the hunters. They're the farmers. While they're out watering their gardens, we're out hunting and finding deals for you. Doing acquisitions has to be a very disciplined process. You just can't jump into it and be opportunistic about what comes across your desk. You have to plan for it. You need to size the deal. How big should the deal be? Remember to bring in your banker, your commercial banker, because they're going to have some say on it. And whether you're using your own cash, your banker's cash, or in the case of a public company, your stock, you're using up resources. So you need to spend a lot of time figuring out who you are, who you want to be, what your culture is, what the culture of your target should be. And if it's not, that may be an elimination factor. Develop a list of targets. Tier them. Who do you want to partner with? Make sure that they know you're interested in them. And every time I've run an acquisition program for a company, nobody is ever for sale, but stay in front of them. Make sure that everybody on your team, your management, your shareholders, your board, your accountant, your corporate lawyer, your commercial banker, and anybody else you're thinking you need to bring in is part of your acquisition strategy, and that they buy into it, because it's a lot of work, and when you get there, you want to make sure everybody's on board.
Arguments for acquisition. It's fast, it has a low opportunity cost. You scale quickly, there are advantages to scale. You can complete your staffing, you can complete your sales, you can complete your suite of products or improve your products. Acquisition is often easier to finance than organic growth. Acquisition takes competitors off the market and denies those competitors to other people who are out doing acquisitions in your market. Size can facilitate financing. Size can unlock patents and technology opportunities.
I'll take it from a perspective, from two perspectives. In Denver, I used to buy oil and gas properties. And oil and gas properties are pretty easy because you're buying producing properties, and so it's really easy not to get too caught up in terms of people or anything else because you're buying an asset that's in the ground, so all you have to do is price it adequately. So that's pretty easy in terms of growing a company, and everyone can understand that. I also used to buy companies for IBM, and their stats are interesting because they're accurate, and actually it goes beyond that, because when you look at the stats as to why acquisitions fail, 70% of them fail because of lack of integration. But if you're trying to grow your company, then what you really need to do is spend more time up front. And you talk about cultural issues, and that's exactly right. So you need to understand exactly who you're buying and what the culture of the company is, and to make sure it is consistent with your own. Because if there's a mix, if there's a difference in them, you're going to doom that acquisition to failure. IBM did a little differently because it only bought, for the most part, other than Lotus, it only bought companies that it had extensively partnered with. And so it already knew that the technology worked, it already knew that its customers wanted the technology. And when we made an acquisition, we understood what the strategic reason behind it was, but more importantly, we understood what the value proposition was to us. When you say, why do I want to grow? Well, if you run a mom and pop shop and you're okay with a lifestyle company, you probably shouldn't grow because there's really not a lot of reason to. But if your ultimate end goal is to sell this thing, there's more value in the marketplace currently and in the last several years for larger revenue-sized assets. So, you know, if you're trying to raise money for a $3 million software company, good luck, because there just aren't a lot of people out there. But if you're trying to raise or sell a company that has $15 million in revs, $3 million in EBITDA, I can find a ton of people that want to buy you and will finance you. So, you know, the end game of what you're trying to accomplish really should be a determinant of what you're going to do in terms of your growth strategy. One important thing was just said. Perhaps if there's somebody that you are interested in acquiring, have a strategic partnership with them. Try it out. Know what it is you'd be getting yourself into.
That way you can eliminate any issues up front and determine is it good or not.
I'm going to be brief. I'm a technician in a businessman's suit. And we talk about scalability, we talk about due diligence and integration and having a strategic plan for basis for purchase. It's always interesting to me, from my perspective, is that typically, I was looking at a statistic of the number of acquisitions, or the activity of acquisitions. I have the chart here, I'll be glad to share with folks. What's really interesting to me is that the activity spikes in the highest part of the economy. And what's really interesting is the activity goes way down in the lowest part of the activity. And as a farmer, I find it interesting that we're planting seeds when it's time to start harvesting. And we're not harvesting when it's time to be planting seeds. So it's almost reverse that I see. I think you're right from a strategic standpoint, entering the marketplace by acquisition is a possibility. But what I've seen in my experience is that the emotion overrides the due diligence. And in many cases, you get over-leveraged because what's behind the curtain, or as Forrest Gump used to say, about his box of chocolates, you never know what you're going to get. And I find that the due diligence process is shielded by folks who are professionals at positioning companies for sale. They scrub the books, they help prepare the company for its highest and best offer, and many times the acquirer finds out after the fact what the nuances are that they didn't count on.
IBM bought Tivoli. Tivoli was a $50 million revenue company out of Dallas. IBM paid $750 million for them. And you say, holy moly, how does that work? The value of every financial asset is ultimately a representation by cash flow. And you can talk about EBITDA, free cash flow to equity. You pick your metric. So when IBM did a business case, it looked at Tivoli on a standalone basis. Say Tivoli was worth X. IBM thought it was worth 5X because its business operations, Frank Moss, who came with it, and the rest of the operating unit, said, if you buy us this asset, we'll deliver 5X in terms of value. So we could pay 2 or 3X and still create shareholder value. Tivoli immediately launched IBM into a competitive competition with Computer Associates' Unicenter product line. That business now for IBM does about $4 billion, and it's done more acquisitions, but that's one example. Let's take a look at Lotus, because we hadn't done a lot of stuff with Lotus. At the time that we bought Lotus for 100% premium, people said, holy moly, why did you do that? Well, we wanted a presence on the desktop. And the marketplace, IBM stock price rose a buck when we bought that acquisition. So people that said we overpaid just don't get it. At least the market thought we had paid a right price, or a price that created value for IBM. Those are some of the examples. Sometimes in terms of getting into a marketplace, that technology is just sort of blocked. You're going to have to acquire the IP in order to enter a marketplace on a competitive basis.